My family said, "You're not welcome at Christmas. It's only for parents now." I smiled, nodded, and booked a luxury cruise instead. They called it tradition. I called it freedom. My name is Maureen, 34, pediatric nurse practitioner. No kids, no apologies. Last Thanksgiving, my sister-in-law told me, sweetly, almost lovingly, that I was too single for family holidays. My parents agreed. My brother said nothing. So I packed my silence into a suitcase and took it somewhere warm. 3 weeks later, I was standing barefoot on a deck surrounded by blue horizon, champagne in hand, watching the coast shrink to nothing. They thought they'd excluded me. They'd only freed me. If you've ever been quietly erased from your own family, you'll understand. Because sometimes, peace looks exactly like revenge. I used to think family meant unconditional love. Turns out, it had conditions I didn't meet. After my divorce, I spent every holiday trying to prove I still belonged. I showed up early, stayed late, brought gifts that showed I paid attention. When my siblings needed babysitting, I said yes. When my parents needed help with doctor visits, I rearranged shifts. It was an obligation, it was love. But love, in my family, came with ranking. Jessica, the eldest, had 2 kids and a minivan. Michael had the picture-perfect marriage with Sharon and their toddlers. And me? I had degrees, patients who trusted me, and a quiet house with a dog. But somehow that was never enough. At dinners, my mother would smile kindly and say, "You'll understand when you're a mom." That sentence sliced deeper than she knew, because it wasn't advice. It was a dismissal. It meant my life as it was didn't count yet. Sometimes I'd tell a story about a child I'd helped at work. A little girl who beat leukemia. A baby whose first laugh I witnessed. And they'd nod politely before turning back to talk about their kids. My victories didn't sound like theirs, so they didn't register. I wasn't the main character in the family narrative anymore. Still, I tried to ignore it. Every Christmas, I wrapped gifts for their kids, helped decorate the tree, and watched them take the family photo I was always somehow cropped out of. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then I realized I was always the one holding the camera. It's strange how exclusion doesn't happen in one loud moment. It seeps in quietly, like cold air under a door, until one day you wake up and realize you've been standing outside your own home for years. Next year, they wouldn't even pretend to open the door. It started with Sharon's smile, the kind that hides a knife behind its gloss. Thanksgiving dinner was almost over when she leaned toward me, her voice dripping with something sweet and venomous. "Marin," she said, "we've been talking with your parents and decided to make Christmas a little more intimate this year." I set down my wine glass. Intimate? You know, just the parents, a family thing. For a second, I thought she was joking. Then I looked around the table, and no one corrected her. My brother, Michael, was busy laughing with Dad. Jessica was chasing her daughter with a napkin. My mom was refilling glasses, humming carols under her breath. No one met my eyes. "So you're uninviting me?" Sharon giggled, that brittle sound that makes your teeth hurt. "Oh, don't say it like that. We just want the kids to have their own memories. You'll understand when you're a mom." There it was again, the same sentence. This time it didn't just sting. It cracked something open. I looked at my father. "Dad?" He sighed. "Sweetheart, you know we're not getting any younger. We just want to focus on the grandkids while we can." "I'm your kid," I said quietly. "Doesn't that count for something?" My mother smiled like she was smoothing over a wrinkle. "Don't be dramatic, Marin. You'll have your own family someday." Someday. Always someday. Never now. I went home early that night, blaming it on a headache. But really, it was grief. Small, sharp, and humiliating. Cooper met me at the door, tail wagging like I was the best part of his day. I knelt down, hugged him, and whispered, "It's just us this year, buddy." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, staring at the glow of the Christmas lights I'd hung alone. Every bulb reflected back an old memory. Dad laughing, Mom humming, me at the edge of every frame. I wondered when exactly I became the extra in my own story. The silence felt heavy, but beneath it something new stirred. Clarity. If love was going to be conditional, then maybe it was time to love myself without terms. Maybe it was time to stop asking for a chair at their table and build my own. That night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. By morning, my decision was made. If my family wanted Christmas to be for parents only, then fine, they could have it. Because I was about to create a version of Christmas they'd never forget. And this time I'd be the one sending the invitation to no one. The morning after Thanksgiving, I woke up with a headache that wasn't from wine. It was from realization. For 34 years, I had built my life around people who never made room for me in theirs. So I opened my laptop, typed one sentence, and hit enter on a search that would change everything. Christmas luxury cruises. The screen filled with glittering photos. Turquoise water, white ships the size of cities, people holding champagne, under strings of fairy lights. A floating world where no one asked why I didn't have kids or a husband. Just room service and ocean air. 12 days through the Caribbean. Stops in St. Thomas, St. Martin, and the Bahamas. A ship with 4 pools, a spa, a ballroom, and midnight buffets that looked like art. The price tag made me flinch, then smile. I had savings, a lot of it. Enough to buy peace. I clicked book now before I could talk myself out of it. Then I opened my closet and started packing in my mind. The red dress I'd never worn because it was too much. The white sandals that still had tags. The gold earrings my ex once said looked too loud. This time loud was the point. For every Christmas I spent shrinking myself. I packed something that made me feel seen. Even Cooper tilted his head like he could sense the shift. Like he knew his human was finally choosing herself. When I zipped my suitcase days later, it didn't feel like luggage. It felt like liberation. For the first time in years, I felt something like joy. Real, steady joy. In the weeks that followed, I planned quietly. I bought dresses that felt like confidence, sunscreen that smelled like freedom, and a red silk scarf just because I could. At family dinner 2 weeks later, Sharon smiled at me again. "I'm so glad you're taking the Christmas thing well," she said. I smiled back. "Why wouldn't I? You're right. I can celebrate however I want." She looked relieved. If only she knew what celebrate meant this time. Every night after work, I'd check my cruise itinerary. I even named the folder Operation Marry Me. Cooper sat beside me on the couch, his head resting on my lap as I scrolled through tropical sunsets. It wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was reclamation. Of space, of joy, of dignity. The closer it got to December, the lighter I felt. When coworkers asked my holiday plans, I just said something different this year. No one needed to know that different came with a balcony view of the ocean. And champagne on ice. Christmas Eve would find me somewhere between islands. Wearing gold, not grief. They wanted quiet. I gave them silence. Expensive silence. The ship left port 2 days before Christmas. I stood on the balcony of my stateroom, watching Miami shrink into the horizon. The air was warm, the water endless. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt untethered, gloriously alone. Dinner that first night was a celebration of strangers. There was laughter, live music, and glasses that never emptied. I smiled, really smiled, and asked a stranger to take a photo of me. Champagne in hand, ocean behind me, sun melting into the waves. The caption came easily. "The ocean doesn't ask if you have kids. It just welcomes you." I posted it at sunset, when I knew my family back home would be sitting down to dinner. By morning, my phone was a storm. 37 missed calls. Texts from Mom, Dad, Jessica, and even Sharon. "Mom, Marin, where are you? We're worried." Dad, "How did you afford this? Did someone pay for you?" Sharon, "This is so selfish. You knew this would ruin the mood here." I scrolled through them slowly, each message, a mix of guilt and control disguised as concern. Mom's worried wasn't about me being safe. It was about me being visible. Dad's, "How did you afford this?" wasn't curiosity. It was disbelief that I could stand on my own. For years, they'd told themselves I needed their approval. Now I'd proven I didn't need their permission. It should have hurt more, but it didn't. It felt like standing in the sun after decades in the shade. Then came the comments. Friends from college cheering me on. Co-workers writing, "You deserve it, girl." And the extended family asking pointed questions. Aunt Clara, "Didn't your parents say money was tight this year?" Cousin Ryan, "Guess someone finally treated Marin right." Uncle Mark, "Good for you, it's about time." Every notification was a spark, lighting up years of quiet neglect. I didn't reply to anyone. Instead, I ordered room service. Lobster, champagne, chocolate cake, and ate it on my balcony while the sea whispered below. When Sharon called again, I finally answered. "Marin, do you have any idea what you've started? Mom's crying, people are talking." I took a sip of champagne. Then maybe they should have thought about that before they uninvited me. Silence. "Are you punishing us?" she asked. "No," I said softly. "I'm celebrating me." That night, I posted one more photo. The stars over the water, no caption, just light and distance. They wanted to define me by absence, so I let my absence speak. By Christmas morning, the ship was anchored near St. Thomas. The ocean shimmered like glass. And for once, the world didn't ask anything of me. I had breakfast alone on the balcony. Coffee, fruit, and the kind of peace I used to beg for in crowded family rooms. Messages still poured in, but I stopped checking. For years, I'd measured my worth by their approval. Now silence was its own applause. Later that night, I walked to the upper deck. A live band played soft jazz under strings of gold lights. Couples danced, strangers toasted, and I stood by the railing, feeling the sea breeze wrap around me like forgiveness. I realized then, I didn't need an apology to heal. I just needed distance, and the courage to believe I deserved joy without permission. When I finally posted my last photo, it wasn't to prove anything, just a quiet truth beneath the caption. Sometimes peace looks like choosing yourself. A few days later, my mother texted again. No explanations, no defenses, just 3 words. We were wrong. I smiled but didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because I finally didn't need to be understood to feel whole. As fireworks lit up the sky that night, I whispered to the waves, "Merry Christmas, Marin." It felt like the first one that ever belonged to me. The water reflected the colors of the fireworks. Gold, blue, red, and I thought how far I'd come from that quiet table at Thanksgiving. Every spark above me felt like a piece of my story returning home. Brighter, freer, finally mine. If you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, you are. You always were. And you don't need an invitation to take up space in your own life. Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me in the comments.